As you may or may not know if you've been keeping up with the videos, our first attempt at the Liberty Falls COWABUNGA cranked Easter egg was an utter disaster to say the least, so here's hoping things go better this time. I know they say third time's the charm and all that, but you know, this is the second time, so I'm hoping things just go good this time. But I mean, if things still go wrong, I'm willing to give it a third try. Well, it feels like I was doing this not that long ago, because it really wasn't. It's only been a few days since that first attempt, so let's just give it our best, alright? I will say, the last time that we tried to do this and I died, it was partly my fault, partly not. I didn't realize that my field upgrade was ready because that was one of my first times playing the mode. And even though I knew the functionality of the field upgrade, I just forgot to use it, so, you know, that's a whole thing. So it's kind of my fault, kind of not. I'm just going to blame the game anyway, because I'm sorry. Even though you have the field upgrade, and it is a very useful asset, you shouldn't have to rely on it to the extent that if you don't use it, you're literally just dead if you try to do certain things. I mean, I don't know, that's just what I think anyway. Like, I just feel like the zombies should be spawning continuously, and that should be a backup for cases where you have to, like, you know, sail around or drive the boat around on Terminus, for example. I don't know. What do I know? I'm just some goofy dude on the internet. Alright, get as many points as possible. And we're just going to get out here because we want to start trying to get the groundskeeper to spawn in as soon as possible. So we go from there, build a jet gun, and all that. I have found the magic round to be round 17. I believe I already said that the last time that we attempted this for the boss fight. But that is still definitely true, because I've ran this Easter egg on COWABUNGA Cranked multiple times now. I've been running it, testing it, seeing what the best strategies are. And I'm pretty confident in my abilities to do this. That being said, I do still think that we're going to have to rely on the field upgrade when we first start the Easter egg boss fight, because every time that I've done this, I've had to do that. I don't know why. They just don't spawn any zombies for a while there. It would have been cool if they could have at least paused the timer or do what they did in some of the other Easter eggs like Citadel d'Amour and the Tomb, where they paused the timer for a little bit. But they just didn't do that here. Alright, try to be careful. You know, I mean, we can keep moving through the rounds, but I also want to be careful because, again, I'm just trying to get the groundskeeper to spawn. As soon as we get him to spawn in, then we can keep rolling. I'm also trying to get enough for Pack Punch, hopefully, before we go to do the valve step. Yeah, slice of pizza. I'm avoiding turtle powers at all costs because that's going to set us back. That is the last thing I need right now. I will say I did complete the Easter egg for Cranked in like 20 minutes the one time. It was actually pretty crazy. I mean, that's how long it took me to get to the boss fight, at least. The boss fight itself took like another 5 minutes, but even then. I wish that they would... Oh, there it is. There's the groundskeeper. I wish that they would keep Cranked to the game permanently. It just adds a whole other layer to speedrunning Easter eggs. And you guys know me, I love speedrunning my Easter eggs. There we go. Hit that. Grab you. Then we're gonna go get Napalm Burst on our pee-pee. Hee-hee. There we go. Ah! There's napalm on my pee-pee! I'm sorry, I'm really immature. But you already knew that. Who are we kidding? Oh, I just realized that I have Molotovs. You can technically activate the church Easter egg with Molotovs. I just learned that yesterday, actually. I thought it had to be an explosive of some kind, but nope. But we are going to grab that Semtex. Just to make it easier on ourselves, because once round 10 hits... Okay, oh, geez. I did not realize how much money I already had. I was trying to save up for that door, but then I started yapping. Yapping is my specialty. Alright, go past you. Grab the water valve. Hello, Valve. Valve is a wonderful company. Speaking of Valve, I want a Steam Deck so bad. I know that's so random, but bro, if I could just lay in bed and play like Spider-Man, that would be awesome. I have a Switch, and I love my Switch to death, you know. Anytime that I'm laying in bed and I'm like, oh man, I'm feeling real lazy right now. I got, you know, it's like an hour until I can really sleep, but I don't got the energy to sit up, and I'm laying in bed. Crack out the Switch, get on Animal Crossing or Mario Kart or whatever other games I got on my Switch, Resident Evil 4, all that. You know, that's awesome, obviously. I love my Nintendo Switch, but obviously there's some games that are available on Steam, are only available on Steam, or are current gen, but are so current gen that they don't necessarily work on Switch, or they just would never feasibly go to Switch, like the Sony exclusives. So, I've been thinking about it. I was thinking, okay, I could either get a really cheap 64 gig Steam Deck and then replace the internal, because I've heard you can replace the internal SSD, but it's like, you're not, I believe, at least from what I was told, you can't actually just add to the already internal storage, you have to replace it, which means that I guess I'd have to install Steam OS to that SSD before I install it. Maybe. Or maybe there is, like, some sort of OS somehow built into the device, which I don't really understand how that would work unless it's, like, something fundamental with the motherboard, and there is a little bit of storage on there to hold the data for the OS. Or maybe somehow Steam is so advanced that the BIOS itself on the motherboard and the processor is literally Steam OS. So, like, I have no idea how they have that set up. Or maybe once you put the SSD in, they have something set up there to where it'll automatically install to it. I've also heard you can do SD cards, but I've also heard varying things about that as to, you know, how long the SSDs, how long the SD cards last in there. I heard something about some weird heating issues. I don't know if that was just one user that didn't know what they were doing with their Steam Deck. I've also heard similar issues with other PC handhelds, which there's other PC handhelds out there, but the only one that I'm really interested in is the Steam Deck. I'd also like to get the dock for it so then I can consoleize it. So then it's sort of like a Switch, right? I can either play it in handheld mode, or I can like put it on the dock and get it on my TV. So then, because, you know, I've talked about this before, one of the main reasons that I'm mainly just like a console guy, well, not even just one of the main reasons, but I mean it is like kind of part of it. Just one of the many reasons is that I just like chilling on my futon or my couch or whatever, just chilling and playing games. Whereas PC, I'm not saying this is for obviously like all PCs. But they're all PC setups even. But in most cases, you're just going to be sitting at a desk, right? I already do that enough for work, and I know. You can hook a PC up to a TV. You can get the different front ends for like Steam or, you know, these other third-party programs to make it feel more like a console. You just got your games there. But there's still more just setup process involved there with a PC thing. Whereas a console, it's like, all right, you plug the box in, you turn it on, that's it. That's it. It's there. You don't gotta worry about installing front ends. You don't gotta worry about the other maintenance aspects of the PC. Don't gotta worry about drivers and all this other nonsense. The endless shader compilation. Oh my gosh, you can make a compilation of the amount of times in games that require an immense amount of shader compilations. Again, I'm not here to start the PC versus console debate. I love both platforms and I play both platforms a ton. But, you know, that's just part of my stance on it, you know. That's okay. Everybody's got their preferences. And again, I'm not sitting here to say that one's better than the other. If you want the best graphics and frame rates, PC is objectively the best. If you want the most plug-and-play experience, console is mostly objectively the best, unless you get a faulty system. It's just by nature more plug-and-play. Whereas PC, there's automatically going to be a bit more setup, but where was I going with that? Steam Deck, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, you know, if you consoleize it, then it's still technically PC gaming, but at that point, what I like about Steam Deck and with the way that it's all set up there, and it's mainly just because, I mean, like, you can still access Windows on a Steam Deck, but it's Steam OS first and a Windows device second. You know what I mean? Like, the main thing with with the Steam Deck is that the OS is all built around gaming, so it's still technically PC gaming. But it's mainly just that Steam experience, that Steam front end. You know, it's just all about the games. So that, for me, would be the happy middle ground between PC and console gaming. I would be all over that. And at this point, can we just be honest when it comes to PC versus console gaming? I think the fact that there's even a difference is stupid. The video games themselves are different. Just because the platforms are different is completely, how do you say that word? Superfluous? You know what word I'm trying to say. Superfluous. For some reason I have trouble saying it. Superfluous. You know what I'm saying? The word that I can't say, but I know the meaning too. It's just like, it's, for the most part, if you're playing Dragon's Dogma 2 on an Xbox or a PlayStation or a PC, it's the same video game. The frame rates and resolutions might be a bit different depending on your rig and if you have a PS5 or a 5 Pro or a Series S or X or whatever. But it's the same video game. At this point, consoles are basically just PCs in a convenient box. In fact, I'd say that that's all they've ever been. I mean, it's computer parts. They have graphics cards and processors and RAM and storage and motherboards and such. What's a computer? Just that. Video games are video games. I really think... No, it's a terrible comparison. I'm gonna stop myself before I even say that, because it was supposed to be a funny joke, but never mind. I'm not even gonna say it, because I don't want to get myself canceled here. But I just feel like it's kind of silly, man. You know, it's like, who cares what platform you're playing on, man? In my eyes, if you play Candy Crush on a mobile device, you're just as much as a gamer as I am. Those folks that play Candy Crush, I would say, are even more dedicated than some hardcore gamers out there. Do you know how long they've been sticking with that game and how many thousands of levels there are and how much money they've spent on lives and how much time they've spent waiting for lives and how dedicated they are to those games? Then the same goes for any other platform, man. I think we should all just unify and be glad that we're playing games regardless of our preferences or setups or financial situations.
What was that? Your body cam signal is breaking.
So that's another aspect of it, man. There's like, financially speaking, that can also like play into somebody's preferences or setup, because, you know, maybe somebody can't, say, afford a PS5 or a 5 Pro or even a Series... Well, if you can't afford a Series S, there's not really any way you could afford a proper... I don't want to say a proper, but a gaming rig that could actually handle modern games. But if you're out there and you're on a tight budget and you don't got enough money for a PS5 or a Series X, which is still retailing for $500 MSRP USD, but you have enough money to, say, throw together like a $200 to $400 rig somewhere in that range, because you could totally, nowadays, if you wanted to, you could easily get a workstation PC, throw in like a GTX 1650 or something, even maybe like in that range of power. You know, it depends on the prices and where everything is at, or... You know, Intel's even been coming out with those ARC B570 and B580 cards lately, which have been very good for... It's kind of a tough situation because they are technically better for a more budget-oriented build. And they do give you considerable power and, you know, ray tracing capabilities and such, which you wouldn't get with, say, you know, putting like a GTX 1650 inside of a workstation PC, which I do have to say, if you do go that route, you know, if you'd ever consider doing something like that, I would recommend going for a workstation PC, like an HP or a Dell that comes with, say, like a... probably at least, at bare minimum, this is absolute bare minimum, and I'm just thinking with prices in mind, no less than a 6th to 8th gen i5 or i7. I wouldn't even touch an i3 in that, with just considering the age of those CPUs as is. Make sure it has an SSD. I'd say at least a 256 gig SSD just to kind of have a boot drive there. I wouldn't worry about getting Windows 11. That's just not going to work with that kind of rig. Definitely stick to Windows 10. Because, again, I don't even think you'd be able to really run Windows 11 on something like that. I mean, maybe you could, but I don't think it would be a very pleasant experience. Just because, as far as I'm aware, Windows 11 does seem to be a bit more demanding and can be a bit more punishing towards your video game performance as is when it comes to frame rates and such. So, you know, you put that on top of a rather lower-end build, or at least lower-end comparatively to the other things coming out today, then, you know, be a bit of a rough combo. But yeah, you get like at least a 6th to an 8th gen i5 or i7. You get like a 256 gig SSD for the boot drive. Get at least 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM, though. I would probably say go for even like something like 32, just to really alleviate some of the growing pains with an older CPU. Would it be necessary? No, you could get away with 16 gigs for sure. But I do think 32, just so you have more longevity, especially if you plan to do a lot of multitasking, would be probably the smarter move there. And then again, when it comes to the GPU, just because workstation PCs tend to have an overall, and that's another thing you have to look out for, you would have to add up the wattages. There's great TDP calculators out there on Google, for example, where you can look up the power consumption or the TDP of your processor, your RAM, your hard drives and such, which if you do get a 256 gig SSD, I'd say pair that with at least a 1 terabyte hard drive, just then you have actual room to work with to play games on. But yeah, you'd probably want to make sure your minimum TDP would be at least like 365 watts if you're going to go the GTX 1650 route. And you would want to make sure for a workstation PC that your GPU does not require being plugged into the power supply itself. Like, because for that, you would need your graphics card to not draw more than 75 watts. And as long as it doesn't draw more than 75 watts, it won't need a plug You know, it won't need to be plugged into the power supply to draw more power, because, to put it simply, when you're using a workstation PC like that, they just do not supply enough power to actually support a build like that. Obviously, you can modify it, and you could probably change the power supply, but on a workstation PC, it already tends to be a bit limited in that aspect when it comes to customizability, so YMMV there. Hold on, let me just go ahead and activate this Easter egg real quick. Come on. Yeah, you do that, pair with like a 1650 or maybe something in that vicinity. If your budget's really tight, because a 1650 last I checked was still going for about 100. You know, if it was a couple years ago during, you know, the world shutting down and prices being all over the place, I would have recommended something even on the end of like a 550, 4 gigabyte at least. The 2 gigabyte would just be like, no, man. But I don't know if I could, like nowadays, I don't know, at that point, because I'd say a 580, but the 580 itself also requires, I believe, upwards of like 100 watts. So really, I think a 1650 would probably be your best bet if you're trying to make like a workstation PC like that. Sorry for this like extended tangent about all this, but what I'm trying to say is you could easily get something like that, and as long as your specs are statted out correctly, you could easily get the PC itself. It depends on where you get it, right? If you get a good deal, you could get it for anywhere from, I want to say the range would be $60 to $120, depending on the seller on eBay, depending on if you can haggle them. 100 for the GPU. You're looking at a solid PC build there when you account for shipping and all that. For the PC itself, not including the monitors and all that, probably somewhere in the vicinity of $200, about. If you wanted to go that whole route, though, and do, like, say, a workstation PC, if you're actually considering something like that after hearing me talk about it, I'd recommend going for, like, a Dell, I believe they're called Dell Precision, what was it? What was the exact model? The Dell Precision 3620. Because I did actually do a build like that before, where I turned a Dell Precision 3620 tower, because those are, like, the big towers. You don't want to go for a small form factor build. There is small form factor cards, however, within that wattage and within that price range, and just considering low profile cards in general, they aren't as prevalent nowadays as they once were. So you're not as, like, there is still manufacturers manufacturing low profile cards, but not to the extent that they used to be. Like, right now, for example, you know, obviously all the cards are out of stock, but I wouldn't expect to see like a low profile 5080 Ti or 5090 or even a 5070 or whatever. Maybe a 5060 low profile, maybe that'll exist at some point, because that'll be a weaker card and could possibly be more feasible and still push out enough power. But in a low profile, I don't see that happening. I mean, again, though, it's a 50, for a 5060, just considering past 60 cards from NVIDIA, usually not, you know, they're, they range in quality. Oh man, especially if they do a, could you imagine if they do a 50-50? The 50s are the ones that have been like, alright. The 1650 was definitely an exception to that. Oh, going back to the 1650 thing. If you do that, I'd recommend the specific variant of it, or one of the specific variants I'd recommend going for is the Ventus OC XS-V1. Well, it doesn't even have to be the V1, just as long as it's, you know, one of those OC ones. OC just means overclocked, which means you'll be getting more bang for your buck, more performance out of the exact same card. And I'd recommend going for the GDDR6 model. And again, it's only 4 gigs of VRAM for the 1650. If you couldn't tell, I love the 1650. It was a really good card for its time, and to this day, you can still get reasonable performance out of it as long as you're utilizing upscaling technologies like FSR. Unfortunately, the card does not support DLSS. But I don't really feel like that's a huge deal, because FSR has come such a long way, whereas before, you know, just a couple years ago, DLSS definitely would have been the way to go, but especially now with FSR and the recent innovations with, like, frame generation and such, I mean, FSR has really come a long way, and, you know, with the recent frame generation additions, I wouldn't recommend utilizing frame gen if, say, you play a lot of online games like Call of Duty or Fortnite, for example. I mean, you wouldn't, you know, I don't think you wouldn't be needing that in Fortnite, let's be real here, but I mean, if your rig is really bad, maybe, but in competitive games, I wouldn't recommend it, just because it does add a little bit of input lag. But if you play a lot of single-player games, like say you're playing Last of Us, which you can actually do on a 1650, Last of Us Part 1, and other modern games, as long as you're utilizing FSR, for some games, you might have to drop it down to the performance level, but even then, you shouldn't have to go much farther below that, and you can rock your games at 1080p. Sure, there's going to be some AI upscaling because of FSR, but you're still going to be getting a quality experience, you know? at least quality compared to, you know, what you'd expect in that price range for only like $200. Obviously, when you throw in maybe the desk and the monitors and such, you might be looking at a little bit more. You know, if you cheap out on the monitor, probably in total, PC, monitor, and all that, you could probably get away with $300 right there. Seriously. $300 for a competent rig. Is it going to be running as good as even, say, like a Series S? I mean, not exactly. I mean, definitely not. But the Series S also costs $300, and that doesn't account for a screen. So if you buy a screen for the Series S, then that'll push it up to $400. So at that price range, I mean, again, you'd probably still get more mileage out of a Series S out of just sheer performance and available games. Especially because some games like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, for example, you can't even download it on a GPU that doesn't have ray tracing capabilities built into it. You need dedicated hardware, or ray tracing hardware in your GPU in order to run that game. And I'm sure there's going to be other games in the future that require those same kind of mandates. But for the most part, you're going to be running a lot of games. You know, Call of Duty is pretty well optimized, or I don't want to say Call of Duty is well optimized. I want to say that Call of Duty is very flexible. It seems like with how low you can drop things, especially if you go down to like FSR Ultra Performance, again, you're going to be looking at a bit of a Vaseline smeared image, but you could probably even go with balanced performance and still get pretty good mileage out of that. For example, when I did that 1650 Dell build, I remember I was able to run like Resident Evil 4 Remake at pretty good settings, for example, and that's a really good looking game. Just a lot, just really surprising stuff, you know, a lot of the recent games. Only $200. And I know I've been going on this tangent for so long, but I don't know. I just find this stuff really interesting because I love talking. Okay, here's the thing. I always talk about how I don't care about like frame rates and resolutions in games, and that is so true. I don't care about frame rates and resolutions to the extent that, like, okay, if a game comes out like Hellblade 2, I remember it was a huge controversy. Everybody was like, oh man, this game only runs at 30 FPS, or Starfield. It's like, who cares, man? Like, for me personally, I don't care if a game's running at 30 FPS. Honestly, I'm gonna get flamed for this. As long as the game's running above 24 FPS consistently, then I feel like that's acceptable. Because 24 frames per second is the minimal amount of frames per second for something to be perceived as motion with the human eye. So you'd at least be able to get a bit of a rhythm down at 24 FPS. Am I saying that every game should launch at 24 FPS so that I want every game to be that? No. Different use cases. You know, for like Call of Duty, for example, I'm glad that they target 60 FPS on the base level, right? So, you know, it's not necessarily that I have a preference towards any frame rate. It's just that I don't think it's as important as people say. And I personally don't care. Preferences vary from person to person, of course. If you're the type of person where you want your games at 60, that's okay, you know? You know, I understand that. But at the same time, I don't think it's actually such a huge deal, you know? I know I use this example all the time, but when I was split screening games on the N64 or PS1 back in the day, you were playing PowerPoint presentations, but we were still having fun, and we were still able to play the game and set new high scores, even at those PowerPoint presentation frame rates. So, does it really matter that much? I would say no. I'm just happy to be playing video games and having fun, you know what I mean? But, that's just my little tangent on it. Oh no, that's the other thing I was gonna say. Sorry, I'm just waiting for my turtle power to run out so I can actually just start shooting again and get my double points for critical kills. But even though I don't necessarily care about frame rates and resolutions in games, I still find this stuff interesting as to, like, you know, I'm the type of guy where I love watching, like, Digital Foundry. I watch the DF Direct weeklies. I also watch just a lot of the videos when new games are coming out, just because I find the technical aspects interesting, just because, let's be honest, I'm Asian, I'm a freaking nerd, okay? I love technical aspects of things. I love seeing the differences in consoles, how each of them handle the different processes when it comes to, you know, processing, like, processes, graphical processing processes, computing processes in general, how each console or each piece of technology handles certain things, how much performance you can get out of a certain rig or build or whatever. There's another channel I really love that I recommend watching called Random Gaming in HD. He constantly makes videos about new cards, but also older cards. Like, okay, how's the RX 550 holding up in this year? How's the 1650 doing? How's the oh, God forbid, the GT 710? Oh God, that graphics card. Let me tell you, you got like the 1030. But then there were some. I remember back in the day, man. Gosh, the 1070 Ti. That was like the pinnacle of graphics cards for a bit there, man. That card. Oh. Every time I hear 1070 Ti, that takes me back, man. That's just, it makes me jealous for those days. I'll just put it that way because of how we see things are nowadays. I can tell you, I'm not buying a 50 series card. There's no way. I'm not buying a 50 series card. You wanna know why? I have 2 ears, and in between these 2 ears is a functional brain. Mostly. It depends on the day. But, for the most part, it's functioning. I think. So, you know. 40 series, alright, that's more manageable. But, you know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you know, I feel like even then, though, you know, when 40 series first dropped, that was obviously harder to justify. And that's just how recent graphics card launches have been in general, it seems. I almost have to wonder. It's like, in one aspect, I almost wonder if the shortages are intentional, just to kind of create a sense of FOMO. But at the same time, maybe it's just, maybe the demand is just really that high. Maybe it's a mix of both. Sorry, I got gas in my chest. But I can't help but feel like, knowing their track record, you would think that they would wait until they have more cards lined up, or, you know, like more things ready to ship out before putting pre-orders live, or, you know, anything like that, you know what I mean? Or maybe setting up pre-orders first so then they can meet that demand and then ship things out, sort of like what Limited Run does. Sure, it takes a really long time to receive the product from Limited Run, but they meet their demand because they get the numbers and then they start printing. So yeah, I don't know, that's just kind of my 2 cents on all that. But yeah, for example, like when the 40 series cards first came out, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, hard to justify getting that. But nowadays, yeah, obviously get a 40 series card. They're awesome, man. You can't really go wrong with any of them. And AMD's obviously also come a long way when it comes to just everything, right? CPUs, GPUs. Honestly, I feel like, you know, back in the day, I would have done an Intel/NVIDIA build full stop no matter what. But nowadays, I found myself kind of being like, okay, you know, let me throw some AMD in this build. My current build is all just CPU, or I'm sorry, all CPU. Yeah, that's it, guys. It's all CPU, integrated graphics, guys. I'm running Black Ops 6 on Intel UHD Graphics 620. No, right now I'm rocking, you know, an Intel CPU, NVIDIA GPU. Hold up, gotta grab. 32 gigs DDR4 RAM, and a whole bunch of terabytes of storage because, well, I'm a content creator, so I need somewhere to put all my games and all my, especially video files. Video files take up more storage than my games, believe it or not. Sorry, I just gotta get a few perks before we start this boss fight. There we go. That's really all I need for this boss. Oh, round 17, perfect timing. I don't know if I actually want to use the zipline. I really don't want to use the zipline, so we're just gonna run for it. Oh, zombies. Oh.
Freeze frame.
Yeah, I've got a freeze frame, and we're gonna go start the boss fight immediately now. Because this freeze frame's only gonna last for so long. There we go. Oh no, I'm getting a call. Now's not the time to be getting a call. I just saw it go off over there. Thankfully, unlike my last phone, calls don't actually disrupt my videos. My heart dropped right there because I don't recognize the number, so I'm just gonna have to sit for a minute. But yeah, I remember like my old phone, anytime I get a call or an alarm would go off, it would just cut my video, and I'd be like, no! Thankfully, phones auto-save videos, but still, it's like, no! Don't do that to me! Oh man, I always rag on this phone for being garbage, but I'm actually really glad. Because we already had one video thing happen in my Citadel Demo run. My heart absolutely sank because I saw a notification on my phone pop up as I was playing, and I was like, there's only one thing that can be, and I looked and what was it? I was out of storage. But anyway, what was the one thing I was saying before about how, oh yeah, like AMD builds are totally more viable nowadays, and I would say that honestly, if you're on a budget, that might just be the way to go. They've come a long way in terms of quality, pricing. There's so many ways that you can do an AMD build when it comes to budgetary flexibility, whereas with NVIDIA builds, I don't really feel like you have that as much right now. I just kind of feel like you're shoehorned into a few options depending on your budget. Whereas now with like an AMD build, I mean, you could easily go for, say, like CPU wise, you probably, I'd say like if you want something that would guarantee that you could play games at like good frame rates and such, and you wanted to go with the AMD build, you know, go a bit more budgetary, I would say, hold up, we're gonna pop a power keg because I'm getting a bit paranoid here. Zombies are starting to not spawn in as much. Might need a freeze frame. Gosh, I don't like using gobblegums, but like when they don't spawn zombies, I don't have an option. I need my freeze frame field upgrade if they're not gonna spawn them in. But yeah, you know, like for example, we were talking about the ARC cards before, and the B580 has unfortunately been suffering a lot of shortages just because it has become such a popular card due to the amount of power that you get at the price, which is a conversation for another day about, okay, if Intel can afford to sell these things at a perceived profit, hopefully they aren't losing on each card, that wouldn't make sense as a business, then that means that Nvidia is selling their cards at a ridiculous profit. Ridiculous. Which I feel like we've all already known that for a long time. I feel like that's just pretty common knowledge. Like, yeah, Nvidia kind of does screw over its consumers in that sense. They're willing to jack up the prices if it means that they're going to be making more money, as most businesses do. But I do feel like when you compare the prices between, say, Nvidia and AMD, it is kind of like, okay, just how much profit are you guys getting? And like, couldn't you adjust your projections a little bit to make this feel a bit more fair? But yeah, like I was saying, with the... I'm sorry, hold up. Whew. Got a little tense there for a sec. Alright, are no more... Okay, I was gonna say, if no more zombies are gonna spawn in, then I might need to pop me another gummy. Or pop me a fill upgrade, sorry, not a gummy. We don't have any more gummies. Well, let me just take this guy out, then I'll keep saying what I was saying. Yeah, things are getting a little tense here, aren't they? I did not mean to use that. I panicked because usually I have Frenzy Guard on. So I was thinking, oh, okay, let me activate my Frenzy Guard, but no, I just put the timer on. But the B580, you get so much power comparatively for the price. And I would say if you're going for a budget build, or if you're just strict on a budget, but you still want something above like a 1650, and you're willing to shell out a little bit more cash, or if you have more to shell out, either the B580 or also like the B570 is actually really comparable when it comes to frame rates and performance, and frames per dollar if you care about that sort of thing. So, you pair that. I'm sorry, I keep getting caught off guard just because, you know, we're doing this as I'm commentating and trying to have an in-depth discussion about GPUs and such. Just gonna pop that so we can charge our field upgrade a bit faster. Again, I don't like using gobblegums, but things are getting a little borked in this boss fight because my brain's been all over the place. You know what? Let's just get out of my face. I hear. Yep, there it is. There's the abomination. Now we just gotta. I would like to charge up our field upgrade before I interact with that a bomb. All right, there we go. Yeah, you pair like the B580 with say, I don't know, 5600 AMD CPU. It's AB all set. And obviously you want to pair that with like an SSD. Direct storage has been getting a bit more popular lately, which I don't have any personal experience with. I'm still using SSDs, but I never thought we'd see something faster than SSDs, but here we are. There we go. Freeze frame, and time to finish this boss fight. At least I hope so. Oh yeah, open that mouth. Yeah, take it.
If you are what you eat, then I'm 5 pounds of pepperoni.
In pizza wheat crust.
But yeah, look at AMD 5600, and then also ARC B570, B580. Get a good thing going there. Make sure, one of the most important things, never skimp out on your power supply. Make sure you get a reputable brand of power supply. Make sure the wattages fit your needs. If anything, I would say that there's no such thing as too much wattage when it comes to power supply capacity. The more the better.
Totally.
Don't want to end up frying your build because it didn't have enough power to supply all your parts inside of your build. There we go. That's the boss fight complete. Yeah, a lot of flexibility there. So, I know this whole conversation started with what? The Steam Deck? There's a lot of flexibility in gaming in general, though. If you have the money for a full-on build, you know, for like thousands of dollars, you can get something great out of that. A lot of great performance, especially with recent upscaling technologies. You can get ridiculous frame rates while still rendering ridiculous graphics at ridiculous resolutions. If you have less money, you can still get something really good, all things considered, for the price. If you want something more convenient, that is a bit cheaper, but still giving you ridiculous performance. You know, you can still get like a PS5, PS5 Pro, Xbox Series X, and you know, you're going to be getting amazing performance, especially comparatively for the price, and amazing games and exclusives and such on either platform now. And the Series S, it's a great of all worlds, really. You're still getting pretty great performance, and amazing exclusives there, but at a much cheaper price. Especially if you get it secondhand, you can easily find Series S's for less than $200 now, which honestly, if you're just looking for a higher end machine that gives good performance, great games, great way to play games, that would honestly probably be the way to go, like a secondhand Series S. But yeah, that's just why I love video games in general, man. Regardless of platform, there's so much flexibility, there's so many options to fit your specific needs, preferences, and setup, and yeah, man, I just love video games in general. I love talking about this stuff. Honestly, now that I have a second channel, I feel like I could make a video just sitting here talking about this stuff for hours on end. Should I do that? I never ask for comments and stuff because it feels scummy, but would you guys, like, for those of you that watch the second channel or my fourth channel, whatever it technically is because I made the channel fourth, would you guys like videos over there? I just ramble about tech nerd stuff? I'd be down to do it. Straight up, I'd be down to do it. But anyway, I'll shut up now, cut the conversation there. TLDR, TLDW in this case. I love video games. And I'm glad that we finished the Liberty Falls Easter egg boss fight there. So, we'll need to go back through and reattempt the Citadel Demore one then on video again. I've obviously at this point completed all of these, but it's the last one that we need to actually successfully complete on camera, so hopefully we can actually do that. I don't know. We'll find out next time. But anyway, as always, massive shout out, thank you to all the patrons and channel members. Thank you to all you in the low baller tier, and an even bigger shout out, thank you on the big baller tier, Middle Asking, and Big Daddy Manny, and the biggest shout out, thank you all in G tier, Run Events, and Cheese Girl. Thank you guys so much, guys. You're literal legends. I love you. Have an amazing day, stay beautiful. I love you all. Peace.